I was on YouTube yesterday and I got some really good advice from a chap called Chris Cardell. And he gives advice to people about marketing and selling things like books. He's well worth checking out. And he had a story which he shared with us, which I found very moving and instructive. He said that he'd been told by somebody years ago, they said, imagine that you're on holiday and you're on the beach in some tropical place. Maybe it's nice and warm, the sun's shining, and you decide to go for a swim. Maybe you've got some goggles and a snorkel, and you're swimming along, and you're looking down and seeing the coral and all the fish. Everything's wonderful. You're really enjoying yourself. And then suddenly, something grabs hold of your legs and starts pulling you. Now, at that point, what do you want to do? At that point, what are you thinking? Now, the interesting thing is, that's actually happened to me because when I was 11, and I remember this distinctly, me and friends used to go swimming on a Saturday morning. We'd go up the hill to our local swimming pool and we'd mess around in the water and we'd swim backwards and forwards because we could do a few lengths, even though we were only 11. And at one point, there was the shallow end and the deep end, and in the middle there were some steps going up the side, and I was floating by the steps with one hand on the steps, and I was chatting to somebody, and another friend came up, swimming up, and they grabbed my shoulders and they pushed me under, and they were having fun. They thought this was hilarious. This is all part of the play, and I panicked. I was absolutely devastated. I was under the water and I couldn't get up, and I fought and fought to get past these people, and they couldn't understand why I was so annoyed and why I was so upset and what the problem was, because they were just fooling about. We were all splashing each other, weren't we? And I climbed out there and I had to sit on the side and I was shaking. So I know what that experience is like. You're underwater and your one thought is you need to get up to the surface and you need to take a breath. That's the most important thing right then and right there. Nothing else important. I mean, there's lots of other things you want, such as you might want a nice relationship. You might want to drive a nice car. You might want to live in a good house. But at that moment, when you're under that water, the only thing you want is to get to the surface. Now, can you think about that situation? Can you imagine? Can you bring that to mind? And can you think about the thoughts that might be going through your head on a scale of 1 to 10? How much do you want to get to the surface and take a breath? Would it be 10, perhaps? Would it be 20? 20 out of 10, perhaps? At that particular moment, that's all you want. Everything else is totally unimportant. So what he was saying, and I don't think he emphasized this enough, is you need to ask yourself, can I take this feeling and bring it into my life and apply it in a way of asking the question, what do I want? What do I really, really want? What is there on a scale of 1 to 10 that would be 10 for me? That would be so important that that's the one thing I can focus on. And for an author, surely what it is that you could sit at home and you could write a book, and it could be a very nice book and a good story and nice characters, but what you really want is to get that book into the hands of people who are going to read it. You want to get your ebook onto people's laptops and computers and reading devices, into their pockets, into their mobile phones, so that they take it with them. You want them to read it, to understand the story, to see where you're coming from, to communicate. Isn't that what you really, really want? And the only way you can do that, maybe, is by doing some of this social media stuff, by doing some of this selling, by doing the events, going to places and trying to interest people in what you've got. Now, there's a lesson here, because I was watching a TED talk, and the name of the talk was something like, what heroin users can teach people in business. And there were 3 points. One of them was that if you're an ex-heroin user, then one of the lessons you learned in the 12-step program of giving up is about telling the truth. So that's important, right? If you want people to buy your book, you need to be able to say so. You need to be able to say, look, I've written a book. I think it's quite good. Would you like a copy? Without feeling embarrassed about it. And the second thing is, you need to give up on the outcomes and focus on the day-to-day. So, okay, once you've decided that that is what you want and that is what you're going for, then today, okay, you can get on Twitter, but maybe you could do that tomorrow. Next week, you'll get on Facebook. Maybe at the weekend, you'll make a little video that you'll put on YouTube. You'll do that because the third thing, which you emphasize, is that once you're committed and once you start doing things day by day, then what happens is you're faced with uncomfortable work. And surely all authors recognize this. When you're sitting in front of a keyboard sometimes and things are really going well, you're creating worlds, characters, situations, people are talking to each other, the dialogue's crisp and sparkling, you're really feeling proud of yourself, you're really getting somewhere. But that's a day's work. When you take that hat off, that thing that you've got in front of you then has to be transformed into a text that maybe goes up on the internet or gets emailed to a publisher or to an agent. And that's when you're putting on your salesperson's hat. And if you find that process uncomfortable, then just like this person says, you have to do the uncomfortable work. If it feels uncomfortable, then that feeling is telling you, yes, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to do the social media, and you have to do the website, and you have to go out to conventions and sell yourself, put yourself forward as the author who's written the book, put the book forward, put the book into people's hands, and not be ashamed of that, because you want to communicate, you want to get it out there, and you need their money. If you're going to be the person who sits at home writing books, then you need them to be putting money in your bank account so that you can write the book knowing that the bills are going to be paid at the end of the month. There's no getting away from that. It's uncomfortable. It's not what creative people want to hear, but there's always going to be a tension between being creative and having enough money in the bank to carry on being creative. Some people get a grant from the Arts Council. Other people make work and then sell their work to the public, and that's what keeps the whole process going. Now, you're underwater, you're being dragged down, the surface is up there, you're going to have to struggle to get up to that surface and take a breath. So ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it 10 out of 10? Is it really what I want to do? Am I committed to doing it? Because if you are, then you can take all the advice and the training and the things that people tell you, their stories about how they did it. Because you know that might be uncomfortable, but that's a step you have to get through. Let me finish with another story. I read a book called The Tools of How to Live. And one of them was this. Imagine that you're sitting in your chair, like here, and you see something over there you really want. Just like you're trying to get to the surface. You see the golden sunny uplands over there, where you're being paid to be an author, whether you're being paid to write your books. It's a wonderful place. Let's imagine that that's where you want to be. Unfortunately, when you look closer, what you notice is there's a briar patch in between. There's the sunny uplands, but in between here and there, you're trying to get there, there's this briar patch. The only way that you can make progress in life is to roll your sleeves up and say, okay, I'm going for it. And you run into that briar patch and you force your way through, and then you get to where you want to go. So that's the question. Do you want to say yes to that? Do you want to struggle to get through to the place you want to get to? That's the question. can you say yes?